Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/FromTheShadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
So Howler, you missed out. Now, yesterday, I understand, was your birthday. What were you, like 32, 33?
35.
35, all right. And it's too bad you couldn't celebrate in Ohio last night with me and Jason. We got to go to the Ohio premiere of the horror movie, Wrong Turn, The Foundation, starring our good buddy Chris Hahn. Pretty good movie. Lots of good action. I know Jason liked it, right?
Oh, yeah. Outstanding.
Yeah. Judge liked it. It was fantastic. A lot of great action. A lot of good fighting. And I know you're a big fan of action, aren't you, Hal? I mean, you get a lot of fighting.
Oh, that's right. I mean, that's the story of my life. Action and drama, and with a little romance. If my life was a movie, you know,
a regular comedy, regular James Bond. Is that what?
Yeah, with kind of with more of a romantic twist to it. You know what I mean? James Bond rarely had more than one girlfriend in an episode. I'd probably have to have 2 or 3, but gal at the quick shop, gal at the bar, 2 at the grocery store, and 1 at church. I don't know. It just depends. That's life. I've been watching these goofy. My kids have been trying to. We had a couple snow days this week, and you don't know. COVID's one thing, but then get snowed in with them is another. And they're on watching these reality shows. Like I don't know, one of them was Cajun Law or something. I don't know, some ignorant deputies down there. And boy, if we'd had that 25, 30 years ago, where I was from, reality TV, you could have saw some good stuff.
So you're saying the old days are a little bit more exciting and better than the new stuff they got.
Well, the old days, it was maybe that was why it was so off the hook, because there wasn't no cop cameras, there wasn't no recordings, there wasn't no, you know what I mean? There wasn't no, whatever you want to say it.
No surveillance. No surveillance. You just kind of
oversight's probably the proper word.
Oversight.
Yeah, oversight. I tell you, did I ever, we were talking about fighting before the show. Did I ever tell you exactly how my career out in a uniform happened?
I don't think so.
No, actually, I don't recall that.
I was working in the jail, which was kind of a low rung first, startup law enforcement position. And my grandpa's brother was on the city council at one of these small towns in the county. And he was he's a retired Marine, and he was in the Marine Corps from 43 to 68. So your Marines out there in the audience will know from 43 to 68, you saw some stuff, right? World
Oh,
War II.
man.
He was a guy in the Pacific, Korea, and then Vietnam. And he always joked he didn't get worried until he got to Vietnam and seen how, they were fighting the war. So then he retired and he went to work for corrections at the state prison. And then he left corrections when his buddy got to be the sheriff. So he was an old time deputy. And then he just finally rode off into retirement, and he would just sit out in his house in this town called Russellville and just drink and smoke and talk about the way the world ought to be. And he was very combative, and the sheriff that I worked for, who replaced his buddy, who was actually killed in a car accident. So we went from having this old World War II veteran sheriff. He was in his late 60s. I'm trying to think. He got killed in 86, I think, or 87. Anyway, we went from having old World War II Pacific Island fighting Japanese killing sheriff who got killed in a car accident to a young, educated, with a graduate degree philosopher sheriff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And he would go out to these meetings, and at this particular meeting where my uncle's brother was, they were very combative, and some of the older guys would make fun of the sheriff and said they'd run him out of town. So one night he got me and said, "You're going to be the new community policing deputy, and your first duty station is Russellville." So he took me to this city council meeting where he was prepared to be attacked one more time, and the natives were completely quelled because my great uncle, who was the leader of this rebellion, knew me obviously, and told them all to stand down. So that's how I got it, because my family's so combative. Some of the elected officials were scared of him.
And that guy was a genius and put you in a position that's kind of protected him.
Yeah, I mean, he was a true politician. He was a Democrat back when Democrats went to church and owned guns. He was an old school dude. Yeah, he kind of smart in a way when you think about it, right?
Yeah, that's a brilliant move. It's a brilliant move.
Yeah. But fighters, I mean, crazy, absolute crazy fighters that you can't even imagine to this day. I mean, I guess there's probably modern families that fight that much. You just I don't see them turn into pillars of the community like the old people did, and we were talking earlier, did I don't know if I told you of the story about his uncle. Big families, when you start having kids, when your mom starts having kids at 18 and your daughter starts having kids at 18, your grandma at 36, you know what I mean? So when he went to the Marine Corps in 43, his uncle, which was his dad was the oldest of the bunch, but then he had an uncle that was the same age as him, went to the Marine Corps at the same time. And so he went to the Marine Corps with his uncle.
Yeah.
And who ended up losing his leg at Guadalcanal.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and was very decorated and came back here in the late 40s, post war, and the local GM dealer gave him a Buick with hand controls, which was cutting edge at the time, and he had that until he got drunk and wrecked it. And they used to say, you could tell what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My two favorite stories. I was going to tell another one, but I'll tell you the two favorite ones because people don't listen to this here. The river. These guys would drive. Old Highway 94 runs right along the river in a agricultural setting to this day. It floods whenever the river gets high.
Yeah.
So he was, and locals will drive around the signs and try to, because it only floods in the low spots. So you might have some of the highway up, and then all of a sudden it goes into the water, So the locals always fancy themselves as knowing where the spots are, and they continue to try to drive on the road closed. So he wanted to drive around some people that had stopped for this flood, and he got into an argument with the people that were blocking him. So they either said, get out of the car, or he said, you want me to get out there and kick your ass or whatever. And they said, come on, old man. So he goes to step out, and now he's in the water. They're in the water. But the problem is when he goes to step out, his prosthetic leg at that time, they were truly made out of like balsa wood or something that was light. And it would float and pivot at the knee. So he had to keep one hand on the car because his leg kept floating up. So he got out to get in this great big fight, and he couldn't do it because he didn't have his crutch, and his leg kept floating up. And I guess these guys danced around the car, made fun of him, and he either got tired or mad and got back in the car and left. But the other story I tell, my uncle tells it, and he claims it's about 62 or 63, 1962 or 63. And they were all at their grandparents' house, and my grandpa, my dad's dad, was there, and all his brothers, all these guys were around, and they said they were going to go somewhere, and I don't remember where. Where they were going to go. Sunday afternoon, I think is what it was, or Monday. I don't know, Saturday afternoon, whichever it was. The bars were open, and my grandpa's mother, which would be my great grandma, came out to the car. My grandpa asked my uncle, "Do you want to go with us?" And my uncle said he was 11 or 12 years old. And he said, "Yeah, I'll go, Daddy." So they get in the car, and he gets in the car with 3 adult males. He's 11 years old. Grandma comes out and says, "Whatever you guys do, don't be drinking with this boy in the car." And they assured her, "Okay, we won't." And I'd have to show you the highway, but he said they went on right up 179 to Boonville Road, and they picked up another. My grandpa was in the middle of 14, so when I say they picked up his brother or brother-in-law, they just had a lot of folks, a lot of family to pick up. So he said they stopped one place to pick up a brother-in-law, and they drove straight to the bar, and it was about 1 in the afternoon. And he said he thought, my God, we're going to get in trouble because they just told Grandma we weren't going to the bar. So he said they get to the bar, and it's a mill bottom bar, so people in Jeff City will know what I'm talking about. And it's either called the Night After Night, I think is what the bar was called, because the old time cops called Fight After Fight. So my uncle says he's 11 years old. He's sitting in this bar. They buy him a Coke, and they're just, these guys are just in there drinking. His dad's brother, his uncle, and then his dad's uncle, great. So his great uncle, the guy with the bad leg. Somebody at the bar, standing at the bar, started mouthing him. So Silas, the guy with the one leg, he starts to get up, and you want me to come over there? And the guy goes, "Yeah, come over." And he was on crutches because he didn't have his prosthetic leg.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So then my grandpa, my dad's dad, who was a no kidding bad guy. I think I told you, Shane, on the story, he was all services boxing champion for the Army in 49 or 50. Sonny Liston knocked him out.
Oh yeah.
A bar fighter. My grandpa was a tough guy. My grandpa tells his one-legged uncle, "Do you want me to take care of it?" And the one-legged uncle says, "No, I'll do it." And they said he hobbled over there with one crutch under his left arm because he's missing his left leg. As soon as he gets over the bar, the guy starts to say something, and this one-legged uncle hit him so hard, he said it was like the movies. He fell back onto a table and chairs that was behind him. So he said one leg grabbed him and had his crutch tucked in his armpit so he could hold on to it, and then giving him a bunch of rabbit punches upside the head because he couldn't draw back real hard because he had to hold his crutch up, keep himself from falling over. You know what I mean? So finally, after hitting this guy 6 or 8 times, he let him go, and they said he fell to the floor, and the one-legged uncle tried to kick him and fell down because he only got one leg. So this old boy was crawling out the door. They said when the cops showed up, he was crawling out the door, and they were deciding they better leave. So they all start walking out the door. And now my 11-year-old, my uncle, who was 11 at the time, who's now 60, whatever, 3, 5, 4, 5, 6, says he got out there just in time to hear these the victim here, the beating victim, if you would, tell the first cop it's the guy with one leg. And the second cop said, wait a second, the dude that beat you up's got one leg? And they said, yeah. And, this guy's out there bloody as a pulp saying, yeah. And then another cop car pulls up. And he said, the cops are so busy making fun of this dude that they're walking to the car. You know what I mean? They're making their escape. And they look right at the Silas with one leg and they know who it is. And they tell him, just go on, get out of here. And the bloody guy says, ain't you going to do nothing, man? Y'all are cops. And they said, well, if you're so bad you get your ass kicked by a one-legged guy, you know.
You couldn't get what you deserve.
Yeah, we can't help it. That's the way things were back in the old days. We can't help it. But the truth be known, back in them days, all the cops had been in the war. Everybody else had been in the war. Most of them, either World War II or Korea. And they used to tell a story that even if you got arrested, Judge Riley, who had been in the war too, he would, if they got arrested on the weekend and they'd bring them up to arraignment on Monday, and if you could plead guilty to fighting or disorderly conduct for $10, and he'd let you go. And if you didn't have the $10, he'd let you go anyway, and you had to promise to pay $5 when you got paid, $5 a week, or $10 when you got paid, or whatever. And they said that's just the way the fights were back in them days,
That was a different breed of guys, man.
Indeed, it was.
They lived through some stuff, man.
Yeah, different breed of world for sure. So,
You gotta like it. It's the good old days.
I guess if you're gonna mouth the moral is if you're gonna mouth off to a guy's one leg, you better be a good fighter.
Well, it goes to show you. You remember the old adage all the time? People say, "How busy are you?" "Oh, I'm so busy. I'm busy as a one-arm paper hanger or a one-leg fan ass kick contest." Well, I've heard firsthand that the right one-legged man doesn't work up much of a sweat to kick your ass. You know what I mean? Just depends on who he's going up against.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that was another good one. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.